Hello, winners, and welcome to Two for the Win with your hosts, Nick and Will. What if leadership wasn't a ladder, but a labyrinth? What if the lessons you need didn't come from business books, but from ancient myths? Stories of gods, monsters, and flawed heroes. We're going to have a little fun this Monday and mix it up a little bit with some leadership lessons that we've gleaned from ancient myths and stories. But before we jump into that, please be sure you subscribe, share, and follow Two for the Win on your favorite platform. I want to give a shout out to nickmenard.com and the 1% Push, as well as his Amazon best-selling book, Mindset is My Degree, for sponsoring today's episode. Thank you, Nick Menard.
You're welcome. Hello, Will. Hello, winners.
Happy Monday. So, yeah, we're going to have a little fun with this. So give us some feedback. As always, we appreciate when we get the comments and ideas and feedback on things. But we are going to pull from Mythology to share some lessons about leadership. So we'll dive in first. The first one, and one that I know more about the story of the sirens, but as I was thinking about this, I forgot about this story. And it's about Odysseus and his landing on the island of Cyclops.
Ooh.
Do you remember that story?
I do.
So, for those of you who aren't familiar with the story, they're on this great adventure. They end up on this island. They go into the cave. They're eating cheese, having a good time. And then all of a sudden, they're trapped. And what are they trapped by? Giant, muscular Cyclops. And all of a sudden, all heck breaks loose. And the Cyclops starts eating his co-workers, so to speak, but starts eating the members of the crew. And the key thing about this is Odysseus doesn't panic. He stays grounded. And when the Cyclops asks him his name, he says his name is Nobody, which wasn't really his name, but I'll come back to why that was kind of important. But while the Cyclops is pulling some of his crew members and devouring them, he doesn't panic. And then he finds, obviously, an object, and at the right time, he blinds the Cyclops. So one eye blinds the Cyclops and then escapes under the bellies of the sheep, and off he goes. So he survives. So the leadership lesson, there's a few in here, and then I'll pass it over to my co-host to kind of tie it into modern day type of thing. But it's like being patient under pressure. He didn't panic. He was patient and was looking for the right moment to execute. And he was thinking more in moves than moments overall. Like, okay, if I do this, then I can do that. And kind of playing it out, almost like scenario planning, if you will, and trying to find a way to escape and survive. And when he said his name was Nobody, it was an interesting choice of a word, because basically he wasn't leading with ego. He didn't like puff his chest to say, I'm Odysseus and I'm this famous hero or something like that. No, he said Nobody. And it kind of just shifted the way the Cyclops thought about him, maybe underestimating him a bit. And then Odysseus was able to blind him and move him out. So, a few quick things, and I'll pass over to Nick to get his thoughts. Crisis leadership. It's not always about the loud voice that matters. It's there is the best leader. It's about being patient under pressure, using misdirection at times, or timing in a way that, if you're in an adverse situation, can put you onto a better track, and keep people focused and ultimately survive. So are you reacting, or are you outsmarting? Try to be the person who is outsmarting the competition. But pass over to you, my friend. Your thoughts on that story?
Yes. So that story has a lot of, there are positive and negative. Like there's no sort of story or perfect. And we don't try to say that everything Odyssey did was good. It was good because, of course, there are flaws in the story. But the main point here is what Will just mentioned is the worst thing to do when you are under attack or in business, when things are not working or you're losing tons of clients for XYZ reasons, the worst thing to do is to make an impulsive change of the way you work. You need to always analyze, take your time. And I know time is money, but you will save a lot more money or gain money faster by actually analyzing the situation and making small tweak into the situation to try to avoid loss or impact positively the wins. So what I mean by that, we see multi times in companies, in businesses, like people being afraid by a news, like COVID, for example. And like COVID happened, everybody tried to switch everything like within a week. Rarely those companies still survive today. The company who stay put make the changes, necessary changes, but not a full 360 are usually the one that will live through further. Also, like some company who actually stay put on their principle and tweak maybe their system last longer and will go back up a lot faster than if you decide to make a 360 in a week, because rarely those decisions will be useful. Now I have to talk about the part that I'm sure some of you or all of you maybe are thinking, well, that's not great leadership to let your team getting eaten alive. Neither. And I agree with that, but again, every story is you have the thing to take into consideration positive and some that you did negative. So we are not telling that everything that they did was true.
Sacrifice your crew.
We sacrifice your crew and leave.
Right.
That's not that. But the principle of being able to analyze the situation, swallowing your ego, and we talk about ego a lot during on this podcast. And I love that piece of the story as well, like saying like, don't try to put yourself up because of your title, because of your name, because of your recognition in the industry you are in. You would not be the first person to fall the ladder very fast, so stay humble, and things will usually go your way a lot faster. It's the same way that we discuss a lot of time. Give credit to others instead of taking credit to yourself, you know and credit will come back a lot faster than if you actually try to get it, if it makes sense. So that's my 2 cents based on the story.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, the way I read it out, I could see, yeah, he just threw everyone else under the bus. But actually, what he was doing is they had never met a creature like this before, and he was
Mhm.
collecting basically data. He was trying to observe because, again, it was a trap. They sprung on him, and so he lost people right away. But he observed for a bit how the Cyclops was fighting to identify the weakness, and found out the easiest way would be to try to blind him temporarily so he could take off. So
Good.
there
Love
you
it.
have it. No, thank you for that. All right, cool. So the next one, and so the reason I even thought about an episode like this was actually I was having a mentorship discussion with somebody about this next story, about the story of Icarus
Mm.
and how it relates to hubris. So basically, this is like one talk about how somebody takes some strategy led to ambition. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the story, let me give you a brief recap. So Icarus and his friend Daedalus are trapped in prison. And Daedalus was able to come up with an idea, and him and Icarus created wings from wax, attached them to their Achilles heel area, and were able to escape and fly away. And so that we're using feathers and wax. Sorry, not just wax, obviously. But anyway, Daedalus warns Icarus, take the middle path. Don't fly too low because you can get hit by arrows, but also don't fly too high or the sun will melt the wax. But Icarus doesn't listen, and he keeps going higher and higher and closer to the sun. And guess what happened? The wax
Wax.
melts, the wings fall apart, and he plummets into the sea. So, some of the leadership lessons from here is overambition without grounding can lead to collapse. It wasn't so much that he was just going higher because he was afraid for his safety. He kept flying higher because he actually wanted to prove he could get to the sun. Um, and that was why I was talking about this person where they were trying to be ambitious and who they were going to report to. And I'm like, the closer you get to that sun, you just have to be careful. It's not always that it's cracked up to be. And then the other one, so it wasn't just that Icarus was being bold and trying to show us something. He was blind to wise counsel. The Daedalus gave him wise counsel. He chose to ignore it. So, like when you think about a growth mindset, it's not about striving all the time. It's about learning and self-regulating. And humility is a feature, not a flaw, which is a little bit what you touched on before. But I'll pause now, pass it over to you. What are some of your advice to our winners about applying this in a modern day sense?
Yeah. So when I hear that, I think about, yes, of course, like be humble. be coachable. Because literally he received the feedback and he tried to prove his friends wrong by proving his points, and which leads to his death.
Mhm.
So in leadership, I always said it's better to go step by step, instead of trying to climb too fast and go two steps at a time or three steps at a time, because that's where you can stumble and fall flat on your face. And
Mhm.
usually falling flat on your face is losing the confidence of your team, showing a decrease in results, your brand being damaged. And we know that when those things happen, it's a lot harder to get them back. It's like confidence. When you lose the confidence or you do something against the word that you said, it's extremely hard, almost impossible to get it back, and you will get to work 10,000 times harder to get the same results. So work steady. That's what I take out of this. Work steady, be coachable, listen to people who have your best interest in mind. Again, surround yourself with the right people, because otherwise you may not receive the best feedback. All feedback are good. Sometimes feedback that you should not be hearing are important to note, so you don't do it. So that's what I take off of this. But it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And if you understand that, you will go a lot further in life in general, not only in business.
Yeah, 100%. Some of the advice I typically give people is grab the next rung as fast as you can, because you don't know when it's going to come up again. And again, you can figure things out as you go. Nobody's going to be very rarely is somebody going to be a pure expert stepping into a new role. There's a learning curve. But I also think, like, when you think about that story, you have Icarus who's flying and rising fast, right? But he's ignoring the signs. The signs are the wax started to melt, and it was only a matter of time before those wings dissipated. And that's something to be cautious about. So it's not so much of um, don't try to rise as fast within the organization or things like that as you can, but it's more like, are you being observant of the signs, and is there a point where maybe plateau for a little bit before you take that next leap up, based on a variety of factors, and that could be a lot of things like you're alluding to. But one of the kind of things around this as well that I thought was pretty interesting is success without humility is failure in slow motion. I
Mm.
really like that. So your thoughts on that quote?
Yeah, no, I love that. Again, give yourself, it's something that I steal from you, give yourself some grace here. So when you grow into the ladder of leadership, or if you build your own business, you will never know everything about everything. There's a reason why you need to hire the right people or mentored by the right people.
Mhm.
And I think it's very important to understand that this doesn't come overnight. And I love what you mentioned about the plateau is not bad all the time. Now if you plateau for 19 years, that's another problem. But plateau is not bad. If you're willing to progress in your organization, in your company, grow your business, and you plateau for a while, as long as during this time you are learning, you are taking the data in consideration, or understanding better your clientele, or understand better your associates, you will gain so much information. You will get better at your coaching and things like that, that will prepare you even better for whatever it's next. So sometimes I see people running and be lucky sometimes to be able to grow, like year after year, grow, but then they miss steps, so the foundation is not there. And that's something
Mhm.
we talk a lot about, is like, if you do anything in life, the foundation is not solid, now it's going to crumble like a card castle thing. So
Mhm.
it's very important that you don't forget about the steps, and you do the things the right way, and eventually success are going to come. It's, again, not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even in things like in leadership, if you're doing a program or initiative or a pilot, um, again, you've heard Nick and I chat about before. We believe in like a version 0.5 approach. And what that means is get the foundation set, but don't wait for it to be perfect. Start after you have the foundation elements in place and the plan, and then you can iterate as you go. When I think about what you're just saying about that, I think sometimes people can, though, start too quickly if you don't have the right foundational elements set. So if you don't know what is the true problem you're trying to solve, you don't know its economic prioritization in relation to other priorities or options that should be considered. You could act, or say you kick off the pilot or the program, you get some preliminary feedback that seems positive, and you rush to scale and implement when really prudence would be let it simmer for a while. Let's see, is that consistent? So is 1 quarter enough? Should you wait 2 quarters, 3 quarters, whatever it is? I'm sure it depends on the type of item, but sometimes I've seen people take initial findings, they move right to, oh, this is definitely working. Let's go ahead and scale and implement. And then a year or two later, you see that no, it's not working. And then you're trying to unwind that ball that has been wound up. And what a mess that can be. And I know both you and I are experienced that firsthand in the past with certain situations, and it's because they moved too fast or they had bias, and they went to for confirmation bias. They got the information that confirmed their bias, but it wasn't as objective as it needed to be or didn't have as much time, and then they moved to implementation way too quickly, and then they paid the price a year or two later.
It's not only hard to reverse, but it's also time and money. Like you're losing so much time than if you go step by step, and you lose so much money for the time waste. So please make sure that you are observing. And like you said, how long do you need to wait to go from point 5 to point 6? It's
Mhm.
important. But also, should you try with more, like a larger scale instead of going full scale? And that's
Mhm.
something I know we both experience, that it's like, okay, well, this seems to be working. Boom. Like just go another step. Let's add another component to it, or another region, or another business unit, and see how it's going. And then from there, you can then see, okay, those data are very, very good. We are confident to moving forward for the next steps. We communicate correctly, because communication is important when you work in large organization. And then you implement, and
Mhm.
you train, you coach about the implementation, because again, it takes time, but I much rather take a little bit longer and do the thing right, instead of rushing into something and then failing,
Yep.
failing flat on your face.
That's right. Absolutely. 100%. So we gave two specific stories. Now we're going to take a little bit of a step back, 30,000 foot view, and talk about, like, so you're an author, right? But you're a nonfiction author. So
Mhm.
you were writing with facts and stuff. But when you've read fictional books, or you think of movies like John Wick or Lord of the Rings or any of these, Star Wars with Luke
Mhm.
Skywalker, there's a fundamental thing that's used in fiction quite often, where it's called the hero's journey, right? And the
Mhm.
hero's journey is always they're in their current state. Something happens that causes them to depart. So if you go to Lord of the Rings, they're sitting there. Bilbo Baggins, they're written, not the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit. He's sitting, enjoying his little food and drink and everything, and all of a sudden Gandalf the wizard comes, and he has a journey for him. And at first he's like, I don't know if I really want to do that. And then he sleeps on it, decides to go and catches up with the crew, and Bilbo goes on the journey where he ends up finding the ring from Gollum, and that ends up being the Lord of the Rings series books. But there's a departure. So the hero goes from current state, goes on, something departs, some sort of journey or task or whatever. And then there's always that point where at multiple points in that journey, there's like an initiation. There's things that they thought wouldn't be a problem that become a problem, or there's things they didn't anticipate that come up that cause some adversity and sometimes some setbacks, right? And they have to learn to overcome it. And then ultimately they prevail and they return and they come back wiser, and even a humbler version of themselves, right? Because they're like, wow, we just went through some stuff, but we survived it. And even like John Wick, like,
Mhm.
not to be a spoiler, but at the end, he humbled himself in order to get to the place where ultimately he wanted to, as well as to protect his friends. So, when you think about the hero's journey and you apply it to leadership, right? Um, or you think about it going back to these stories, you know, these monsters or these characters that are created in fiction, they usually represent inner struggles. So using Marvel, for an example, right? And you think about how they created some of these characters, and Stan Lee talked about, I created the Hulk because I was going through a rough patch in a personal relationship. And he goes, I felt like I had become this rage monster and I wasn't thinking like I normally would. And
Mhm.
that was his impetus for creating the Hulk. His impetus for creating Spider Man was he had a friend who had experienced loss early of a dear relative, and the kid was kind of an outcast. And he's like, well, what if this kid actually ended up with superpowers, and how would he go? So there's all these different elements of these characters that were created that represent human flaw. Iron Man,
Mhm.
the son of
Mm.
a weapons dealer who was also a weapons dealer, highly brilliant, but was using his knowledge to create mass murders across the world, had a humbling incident where he was trapped, saw that the weapons that he created were actually being used against him in that area. And then he put his knowledge to good to become Iron Man and all that. So, anyway, um, the point being is that a lot of times, though, these monsters or things that are faced are not external, they're internal. And we've talked about that before, like having self reflection.
Mhm.
Sometimes we're our own worst enemies and things like that. Obviously, we know the story of Achilles, right?
Mhm.
And great movie too, by the way, Troy.
Yeah.
Have you ever checked that out?
Oh yeah.
But with Achilles, right? He was dipped by the gods into the lake so he could be impenetrable, and that's why he was such a great warrior. Except for the area
Achilles.
that they held by the Achilles heel when they dipped him, that was the vulnerability. And then obviously when the arrow struck that area, he died. Hence why we call it the Achilles heel. You know, a lot of
Mhm.
things come from these stories. But anyway, when you think about the hero's journey and you think about the monsters they face and the things adversity they face and the things they learn, like how would you tie that to modern day leadership and what our winners should consider?
Well, what I think about when I'm listening to all those stories, and it's great job by the way, but for me is when you are a leader, first you need to understand your people because they all have a story. Like maybe not as
Dramatic.
crazy and dramatic as those from the superheroes that we all know, but they all have a story. That's why we do what we call a MOD, a mission of discovery. So I think that you need to understand the people that you work with because not all people are the same. They all have different past and different circumstances. Don't use any of this as a reason why things are not as an excuse for anything, but by understanding your people you will be able to handle situation coaching and reason why things happening the way they happen because you know who they are. And the mission of discovery never stop because people go through trials and tribulation in life, you know, like you maybe they're single, then they're in relationship, then they're married, they have kids, they're losing people close to, so you need to understand the people. And that's why we do what we call like the empathical
Empathetic
empathetic
accountability.
accountability.
Hmm.
So because you need to understand them, not use as an excuse, but the way you will handle situation are different. So that's number one, understand the people in order to understand their story and navigate situation a lot better. And that's number one. Number two, what I think about that, I think also about the fact that everybody will use your information a different way. And it's impossible when you have a large team to communicate to 100 people, 100 different communication style, but you know how to present it to them when you have those conversations. So don't hesitate to send them, you know, a mass email when there's a huge communication to communicate, but give heads up along the way as well. And that's what I'm thinking about because not everybody will receive this information the same way, and they may that may strike fear some information, that may strike, oh my god, I'm maybe not, that message is maybe for me, you know, like some people take everything personally. But if you do the MOD the right way, then you know how certain people will take it, so you can warn them about, hey, what's coming, it's XYZ. And if you're in leadership, you know that, but if you're not yet, you would be shocked how certain people perceive some information in communication. So be careful about that, about the way so the way I'm looking at what you said is more about the leadership aspect of having people and understanding how to handle each situation and how people can take some information. But I'm sure there is a lot of other way to go, but that's the way that I was going.
No, I love it. I love it, and totally spot on. And I think the other thing that I took away as I thought about the hero's journey were these two things. high level, and I'll go into specifics. One is they always faced adversity at some point where they could have turned around, but they didn't. And the other is they never went alone. There was always somebody that came along to help. So I'll give a few examples. Going back to Lord of the Rings, you got Frodo and Sam. They're trying to find Mount Doom so that they can, or the mountain where the volcano where they can throw the ring in and destroy it so that Sauron's defeated. They're lost. They're wandering around. They're starting to get low on food and things like that. Who comes along? Gollum. Now, Gollum actually ended up being evil, but there was good inside Gollum to a good purpose he served because he knew the path.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he had sinister reasons why he wanted to show him the path, but that he ultimately helped them find to where they needed to go. They wouldn't have made it without Gollum. That's the funny thing about that one. You look at something like, so you think of John Wick. So John Wick at one point was betrayed by a trusted confidant, Winston, because Winston wanted to get the hotel back after John Wick had taken out all the adversaries, and Winston shot him. And he fell over down. He survived. And who helped him? I can't remember the character's name, but it was the Lawrence Fishburne character, where previously they were kind of adversaries. And they decided, well, our common enemy makes us not enemies, and helped them out. And that helped John Wick. He gave him the bullet to do all that stuff and all that and stuff like that. So there's always, at some point along the way, people could have turned around and went back. Frodo and Sam could have said, you know what? It's not going to work. We're going to go back and forget this quest and get back with the fellowship. Or could have been John Wick. He could have just laid there, died. He could have tried to hide and just gone underground and gave up his quest. But no, they persevered. And then, of course, they found somebody along the way to give them a helping hand, like we were talking about, like circle of influence. And sometimes you need that push. Even you, which I appreciate, like there was a patch where I've kind of lessened some of the activity and some of the things outside my core work that I do. And he called me on it. And that's what you need. You need that. And it's like, all right, it's always festering in the back of my head. So it did get me to get moving. And that's the important thing. You need somebody who's going to be there, give you that helping hand. Sometimes it's words of encouragement. Sometimes it's a little challenge or push that's needed, but rarely can somebody make a successful journey on their own.
100%. No, I agree. Nothing is possible by yourself. And I think your way to do the parallel between the superhero and the leadership is actually very spot on, because nothing you can accomplish by yourself. You will never have a straight line. It's gonna be always up and downs and sideways and spaghetti kind of road to get where you want to go. And that's a situation for all the superheroes or all the character you mentioned. So it's actually spot on. So I love that from one things that maybe most would not even think to go, we can actually use a parallel. And that's something we experience in every single one of our guests coming on the podcast. Every time we talk about something related to business, it can be applied on personal life. It can be applied in so many different ways. So actually, it's all intertwined into the same thing. So just believe in what you experience and what you listen with us, because we've been through it. I'm sure you've been through it, and everything comes back to the same few very important logic. And behind me is like growth mindset. It's actually like everything. If you have that, you will be able to do the work to achieve what you want to achieve. It starts with having the right mentality and then do the right thing, but acting the right way, because it's gonna be work, and it's not gonna be the way you think the first day. It's not gonna be the way to be successful day two. So just always be open minded and accept mentorship and people around you.
Yeah, extremely well said. And so to wrap up, like, there's a reason why the hero's journey has lasted through thousands of years as an effective way of storytelling. We've all been there where we've been comfortable. Something disrupts our comfort, sets us on a path. The path is laced with adversity and opportunities for growth and learnings. You find some people to help you, and then you end up, they succeed. They rise above all those things. They end up winning or having a successful journey. And then there's wisdom that comes from that, and then passing forward that wisdom. So again, hope you really enjoyed this little different take on how we talk about leadership topics. If you have other ideas you want us to consider, or other genres we should create those parallels, like we had the movie quotes back a number of episodes ago, and now we had some mythical stories that tie to leadership. But again, happy to take your feedback and incorporate these into the episodes. But that will now wrap up this edition of Monday Mindset. So again, please be sure to subscribe, share, and follow 2 for the Win on your favorite platform. And again, huge shout out and gratitude to nickmenard.com and the 1% Push, as well as his Amazon best-selling book, Mindset is My Degree, with another book forthcoming soon. Teaser. On that one, for sponsoring today's episode. That'll do it, winners. We will see you next Monday.
Bye,
Be well.
winners.